narcissist. No, it's not. They're actually definitions and things to look out for within those type of relationships. So that whole part of narcissistic relationships, like I said, we'll touch on that on another podcast. Within that podcast, we'll probably also talk about sociopath, psychopath mates and family members, because all of this is related. It all ties together, and it's very important that you understand personalities and how they can affect you or how they're currently affecting you. Knowledge is power. I will continue to say it. So if you want to arm yourself with knowledge, then you want to make sure that you have as much information that you can to make wise decisions. When we start talking about the narcissist, sociopath, psychopath, these topics I may have to break down into it like a mini series, just because I want to make sure I give the information so you can truly understand it and be helped by it without giving too much. I want to make sure it's in small bits so you can digest the information and you can understand it. I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm going to break it down. So, as I said, the narcissist, like I said, was what we're talking about. The narcissist, as it pertains to the soul tie, is the perfect situation. Now, normally the narcissist will prey off of empath individuals. So, an empath, what is that? The actual definition of an empath is a person with the paranormal ability to apprehend the mental or emotional state of an individual. It can be defined as being able to put yourself in, quote unquote, someone else's shoes to better understand the other person's feelings or experiences. So basically, the empath is the person that before they make a decision for themselves, they're going to take other people's feelings, thoughts, and emotions into account before making their final decision. That is what an empath is. So if that empath finds themselves in a soul tie, they will excessively, and I mean excessively, give the narcissist whatever they want until that empath has nothing else to give. Basically, sucking the empath completely dry. Just sucking their spirit dry. If you could just see it as a visual example, I'm not giving the whole big old definition, but just an example, just get a straw, take the narcissist, is sucking at that straw, and at the other end of that straw is the empath, and they're just sucking the spirit out of the empath until that empath is so dry because they're not getting fed into. They're just getting sucked dry. So that's why it's very important for us to have a podcast so we can break down and understand the narcissist, how that pertains to relationships, so you can understand that not only is this involved in just other situations like abuse and things like that, but even in narcissistic relationships, a lot of times soul ties can be intertwined in that. So in order to understand a narcissistic relationship, we'll have to break that down. And as I said, we'll do that later on. So you just understand very briefly that the empath basically, man, it's a terrible situation when the empath gets involved with a soul tie relationship. It can almost kill a person. It can, because that person is just giving because they have no choice. An empath has no choice but to be the way that they are, just as a narcissist makes a decision to be how they are. So they just suck them dry. So, moving on. What is the solution if you find yourself in this type of situation? If you think you might be in the grips of the soul tie, I'm going to give you 4 quick suggestions because I'm not a doctor. So these are just suggestions, y'all. We're just talking between friends. Number 1, for those of us who are serial daters, and the people that I'm talking about right now who are serial daters are people who find themselves in relationships frequently. They enjoy just that chase and finding the next person. They're okay with breaking off a relationship and starting one fresh with the person with no issues and problems. A lot of times their relationships are for shorter periods of time because they haven't found that one. And they are willing to just keep on falling into the next relationship until they find that person of their dreams. So, for those of us who find themselves serial daters, as I've just defined, we have to be careful and stop bouncing in between various relationships and giving all of ourselves. Remember, this is just for people who find themselves in a lot of relationships. You have to understand that people do not come in and out of your life without taking and leaving something. Sometimes what they leave behind is not positive and makes its way into your new relationship, causing another person's spirit or energy to infiltrate the new relationship, which is a huge problem. Keep in mind, if marriage is your ultimate goal in dating, know that you cannot give all of yourself in a marriage if you are tied to someone else. So you have to make sure that you're not going into relationships and giving all of yourself and having that person leave certain things and certain spirits in you, because every relationship that you have is going to leave something, an imprint in your life. It's either positive or it's negative, but it will leave something. And you have to be careful that if your goal is ultimately marriage, that you enter that thing right. And if you enter that thing right, you have to make sure that you leave all those spirits, all those tendencies, all those past relationships behind. So number 2, you have to admit and acknowledge that you have a soul tie. Any addiction that you're trying to rid yourself of, I don't care what it is, you have to first admit that there's a problem. So you have to admit that you have a soul tie. This must be done in order to heal and properly move on. An example of this is when people say, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure I get rid of all of my old baggage before I get into this marriage." They're acknowledging that they did have old baggage, and they're making sure that they clean up all of their past in order to enter into this marriage with a clean slate. Number 3, you have to rid the person of your everyday life. Yes, I know, easier said than done, but it has to be done at some point. You must rid the person of your everyday life. Examples of this are the excessive calling, the texting, social media, places that you might have frequented with that person. While you're going through this, you want to surround yourself with positive affirmations. And also, if you have it, with people who will reinforce your positive affirmations that can help in this time of weakness. If you are spiritual, find a scripture that will reinforce your affirmations that you can recite to yourself in the morning as you start your day. The key is just finding something, whatever it is, whatever resources that you have to assist you in separating your body, your mind, and your spirit from a soul tie. Number 4, finally, it may be beneficial for most people to remove gifts from the person. You need to remove the gifts from the person. But I can't tell you to do it because you can do whatever you want to do. But I'm just saying, if you're really serious about this whole separation thing, you need to remove all of them. All of the gifts, all of the reminders of that soul tie that are in your life. The enemy is likely to use old gifts, old objects, old situations to tempt you to reach back out to your soul tie. This may have you feeling like you are not whole without them, without your soul tie. But the truth is, you are whole without them. God created you whole. So there's no questions here. You are whole without this person. Regardless if your mind is tricking you or your body is tricking you into thinking that you can't live without this person, you're going to be okay because God created you whole. He created you before this person was in your life. So you're going to be okay. The problem is God did create Adam and Eve. And yes, many of us want so badly to be with our future husband and wife. But a lot of people don't understand that a desire to want something can turn into an obsession. Being obsessed is not healthy under any circumstances. It is not healthy. And it will turn that person into an idol. If you are obsessed with a person to this degree, that person will turn into an idol. And let me tell you something. No one, and I mean no one, should ever be worshiping a person. That is called idolatry. That is why it is very important to break these unhealthy ties in your life, to free yourself, but you also have to make room for someone in your life who is healthy and that can enter into your life when the time is right. So, that is my whole thing about the soul tie. I didn't do too bad, 24 minutes, not too bad. a little quick breakdown on soul tie relationships. Like I said, we will go into it a little bit again when we talk about the narcissistic relationships, because as I said, narcissistic relationships and soul ties, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times are tied together. And I can give examples of that, and we can get into that, like I said, into another podcast. But I just wanted to just give you a quick podcast that can define, identify, and just help you through the process of understanding the soul tie. And if you are, like I said, going through it, what you can do to start freeing yourself from that bond. None of these topics, I understand, are easy to hear, but it is very important that we open our minds, because when we open our minds, it just makes us better people. When you arm yourself with knowledge, like I said, knowledge is power. So take these topics, learn about them, put it in your spirit, put it in your mind. Let it be a lesson learned. Let it be something that you can grow from. Let it be something that you can even help somebody else out with. So that is it for this podcast. I thank you so much for listening. And until next time, guys, bye-bye.